Socrates is skeptical of Euthyphro's third definition of piety, and so Socrates asks, does this actually tell us what piety is? Is it a definition? Now, this is phrased as a question, maybe it's an objection, but he's asking, does this really tell us what piety is? Is it really a definition? It might look like a definition, but is it really? And this is the point at which we get the so-called Euthyphro problem. Socrates' discussion here, or as Plato was writing it, it's kind of hard to follow. So I'm going to give an analogy, and then we'll see what the problem, and then I'll state what the problem is. I'm not going to try to go through all the little pieces of the text, though. So let's consider some gelato and this blue square. Gelato, it's tasty, yeah, and we might say it tastes good. Those are two different things we might say. It's tasty, at least apparently that's talking about it. It tastes good, that is maybe talking about how we react to it. Maybe you don't quite like that, that's okay. We'll see, that's fine in a second. What about that blue square? Well, there are two things we can say about it. It's square, actually, that's the way it is, but then also it looks square. That's how it affects us. When we say something is tasty, really actually what we're really saying probably is just it tastes good. So although it looks like we're talking about it, really we're describing how we feel about it, how we react to it. So saying something is tasty is really talking about our reactions, right? There are those two different things we can say, but the first one, saying it's tasty, is really just stating, is just a shorter way of saying, how does it make us feel? It makes us feel good. Whereas when we talk about the square, we think, why does it look square? Because it is square. So there, on the one hand, there's the way it affects us. It looks a certain way. And on the other hand, there's the way it is. And those are two different things. And why does it affect us in the way that it does? Because of how it is. Okay. So in the case of tastiness, we say it's tasty because of how it affects us. Same thing with lots of other words. So maybe loud is like that. Or some people might say that beautiful is like that. Saying something is beautiful is really to say how we feel when we see it or hear it. Socrates, or at least Plato, wouldn't agree with that. Plato would say, no, beauty is the way it is, and it pleases us because it's beautiful, but you might not agree with that. Or saying something is funny. You might think that when we say it's funny, what we're really saying is that it causes us to laugh and have other sort of feelings when we hear it or see it. So when we say it's that way, what we're really saying is it's shorthand for saying it affects us in a certain way. Or the way it is it looks like we're saying the way it is, that's really because of how it affects us in a certain way. Whereas with squareness, no, it affects us in the way that it does, mainly looks square, because of how it is. So that first category, those we might think of as subjective ways things are. When we say that they're that way, we're really talking about how they affect us, subjects of experience, people, what kind of reactions we have. Whereas with other things like squareness, we might think, no, those are objective, they're the way they are, independent of how they strike us, and then it's because of how they are that they have certain effects on us. It's because it's actually square that it looks square. There's more to its looking square than its being square. Sometimes things that are square don't look square, but when a square thing does look square, part of the reason why is because it actually is. Okay, so the problem is big sort of versions of this. There are various things that we value. Right? You might value your family, your friends, you might value justice, you might value beauty. We might wonder, when we value those things, do we value them because we're good, or because they're good? At least sometimes. It's good, and when I value it, that's because I'm recognizing that it's good. That would be thinking that it's like squareness. It's good, and then I get onto that correctly, and I see that my friends or my family or justice or happiness, they're good, and that's why I value them. Or is it the other way around? That my valuing them is what makes them good. And when I say that they're good, all I'm really saying is that they affect me in a certain way, that I care about them, and that I value them. And that would be more like tastiness. So when I value my friends or my family or justice or happiness, that's just like tastiness. I'm just saying those are things that make me feel good in certain ways, or that I care about in certain ways. And value and goodness is really just a subjective thing. Which way is it? Well, we'll see what Plato and Aristotle and some of the other philosophers have to answer that question, but that would be a big version of this problem. Or Relatedly, if we believe in a certain kind of God, and the kind that we see in Judaism or Christianity or Islam, we might wonder, well, so God gives us certain commandments, maybe do not kill, do not steal, treat others as you would have them treat you. So there are those commands. We might wonder, did God command those things because they're good to do? Or are they good to do because God commanded them? Why should I treat my neighbor as myself? Because God said so. Or why should I treat my neighbor as myself? Because it's good to do so, because they're important and they matter, and that's why God told me. Which way is it? And that's close to the version that Socrates and Euthyphro worried about, but it's not a singular God as we have in those monotheistic religions, but lots of gods as they have in their religions. And this is where Euthyphro's third definition gets tangled up. So Socrates asks Euthyphro, we say that gods love things, love pious things, and we want to know why. Is it the case that gods love things because they're pious? So there's something about the pious things that makes the gods love them? Or is it that pious things are pious because the gods love them, right? What's that relationship? Is it like with squares, where we say it looks square because it is square? Or is it, no, like tastiness, where we're just summarizing our reaction to it? But in this case, it's not our reaction to it, it's the god's reaction to it. So there are these things that are pious. When we say that, does that just mean we're just saying those are the things that the gods love, but we haven't said why they love them? Or when we say that they're pious, are we saying there's this quality they have, kind of like squares, but there's this quality they have, and the gods love them because of that wonderful quality that they have? And Euthyphro says, oh, it's that one. Gods love pious things because they are pious. So there are these things that are pious, there's something about them, their piety, and that's what makes the gods love them. And so it's this one. This is the one that Euthyphro agrees to. Gods love pious things because they are pious, there's something good about them, and that's why the gods love them, and not the other way around. And so we're thinking of piety, in this case, more like squareness and less like tastiness. It's a quality, those actions have it, and that's why the gods love them. Well, let's remember how definitions work, right? If the definition of piety is all the gods love it, suppose that was our definition of piety, that would mean that pious things are pious because the gods love them, right? It would be saying, if the definition of piety is all the gods love it, then we're saying that piety is just being loved by the gods. It isn't this other quality. Well, we'll just agree that piety is this other quality. Things being pious explains why the gods love them and not the other way around. And that means that the definition of piety is not that all the gods love it. That doesn't tell us what piety is. It tells us all the gods do love pious things, but then we want to know, what is this quality of piety that makes the gods love them, the pious things, and we haven't found out. And so this third definition tells us that all the gods love the pious things, but it doesn't tell us why they love pious things. What is it about pious things that the gods love? And Euthyphro hasn't told us. And Euthyphro agrees, oh, you're right, I haven't told you. But now he's getting visibly frustrated. And Euthyphro and Socrates go back for a couple more definitions, a couple more rounds of this. Euthyphro poses a definition. Socrates asks, oh, but what about this? Euthyphro's definition falls apart. And by the end of the dialogue, Euthyphro is really annoyed. And he says, look, I gotta go. And Socrates says, oh, but I thought we were going to figure out what piety is. I want to be your student. Come on, let's get it figured out. And he says, no, I gotta go. Socrates says, well, okay, but maybe we can continue this later. And Euthyphro says, yeah, sure, I'm out of here. And he leaves. And you can imagine that, no, Euthyphro is never going to talk to Socrates again about piety. He's not very happy. Why is Euthyphro not very happy by the end of this? Well, because he said he knew what piety is, but after this interaction where Socrates asked him these questions, it turns out that, oh, maybe he doesn't know what piety is, and Socrates hasn't learned what piety is either. So this is sort of a typical thing, the way that Socrates is portrayed in a lot of these dialogues by Plato is somebody says, oh, I know what courage is. I know what virtue is in general, whatever. I know what piety is, some good quality. So Socrates says, oh, great, tell me. Let's find out. I'm going to ask you some questions. Will you explain? And they go through these questions, and then it turns out the person doesn't know, or at least they can't answer Socrates' questions. So what's a definition, and why does Socrates want one? It tells us, right, what it is. The definition of F tells us what it is to be F. It says what's common to all the things that are F. And so and that makes them that way. So to be reliably pious, right, you would need to know what piety is. And if you knew what piety is, Socrates thinks you will act piously. And in general, for courage or generosity, any sort of virtue, Socrates says if you're going to be reliably generous or courageous, you need to know in any given instance what it is, what courage or bravery would require, and that requires you to know in general what courage or bravery is, or generosity is. He also thinks that if you knew what generosity was or what bravery was, it would be so obviously good to you that you think, well, I'm going to do that. And so these definitions would be really important because they would be very, very practical, actually. Now, his goals then, right, we know he does want to know what piety is. I think he's perfectly sincere about that. But does he think that Euthyphro will tell him the answer? I mean, maybe he does at the beginning, but by the end, it seems like Euthyphro pretty clearly doesn't know what the answer is. They've gone through like 5 different definitions, and each of them have really fallen flat on its face after Socrates' intensive questioning. So we wonder, does he really at that point believe him? Believe that Euthyphro knows, even though he says that he does? Maybe he has a second goal. Euthyphro is claimed to have really important knowledge, and Socrates wants to show that he doesn't have that important knowledge. And that's sort of why maybe Euthyphro is annoyed at Socrates, and maybe why you might find Socrates kind of annoying, is because he makes Euthyphro look bad. And in doing so, right, he's not like he doesn't straightforwardly say, oh, Euthyphro, you don't know what piety is, this most important thing. He's really ironic. He keeps acting as if Euthyphro does know. Now, why does he keep acting as if Euthyphro does know? Because Euthyphro keeps saying he does know. Euthyphro never says, oh, gee, maybe I don't know what piety is. He never really gets it. Or maybe he does kind of, but he can't admit it. And so Socrates just keeps up that pretense of, yeah, okay, you think you know what piety is? Tell me, let's find out. And so what we really see here is the Socratic method in action. Someone else says, I know about something, some virtue, something important. So Socrates says, oh, really? I want to know about that, and starts asking them questions. But these questions are maybe not entirely innocent, and they reveal the interlocutor. That's the name for person who Socrates or whoever is talking to. So they reveal the interlocutor's confusion that person doesn't know the facts about X, and probably has some mixed up contradictory views, right? Whenever Euthyphro tries to give the definition, it always blows up, and he ends up contradicting himself, and that's the way it goes in these Socratic dialogues. Why would Socrates do this? Well, maybe he wants the interlocutor to realize that they don't know, and get them to decide to figure X out, but he doesn't want to tell them that. And so this questioning method would be a way of revealing to somebody, hey, you think you know about this, but you don't, and maybe you could go and investigate it more and have some humility. And so that's the Socratic method. Well, not everyone enjoys being subjected to the Socratic method, and that might have some thing to do with the fact that Socrates is being accused of setting up wrong gods and corrupting the youth. What he's really doing is exposing the ignorance of a lot of the establishment, and that might be part of the reason why he's in trouble. And in the apology, we'll see what actually happens in Socrates' trial.